This video is brought to you by Dr. Kristen R. Bromley's Guitar Method Book Series and Online Music Academy.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Kristen Bromley. So delighted to have you joining me here in my online guitar academy. In this quick answer episode, I'm going to talk about how to change the strings on an electric guitar. So I got an electric guitar here. This is an old Guild that I love, got from my dad. So I'm going to show you how to change the strings on an electric guitar. Now, if you want to know how to change the strings on a nylon string guitar or a steel string acoustic, you can check out my quick answer videos on those. In this one, we'll talk about the specifics of an electric guitar. So first, electric guitar strings. I typically use one of two types depending on the electric guitar that I'm using, and that is, of course, they're steel strings, meaning the wire on these top two strings, sometimes top three strings, is a steel string, steel wire. The lower strings have a wrap around the outside, so they're wrapped by a wire, as well as having the wire that runs through the middle of them. The one that runs through the middle is steel, but on the outside you can get a pure nickel wire, or you can get a nickel-plated steel wire that runs around the outside. And so the strings that I'm using here are just some D'Addario size 10. I'll explain what that means, but these are nickel-plated on the outside of these, of the ones that have the wire that winds around on the outside. Sometimes I'll use pure nickel. With my jazz guitar, sometimes I'll use a flat wound. Most electric guitar strings have a round wire that wraps around the outside, so those are some of the differences. But it's pretty classic, pretty typical to just have steel strings that have the nickel plated on that nickel wire or the steel wire that runs on the outside. But some people really love pure nickel, which is kind of the old classic sound. And I use that sometimes. It's a little warmer. Just sort of depends. Now, size 10 on a solid body electric, that's sort of my go-to. That means 0.010 on the highest string, 0.010 of an inch. So that's 10, and then it gets larger as we go down. If I was playing a semi-hollow, sometimes I'll usually go to 11s and even 12s if I'm getting really warm and jazzy. On full, like hollow body, arch top type guitars for jazz, I usually do 12s, sometimes even 13s. Sometimes those are the ones where I'll use the flat wound strings. But as a little bit on strings here, we're going to go ahead and dive in. Now, with these guitars, it's best to not take all the strings off at once. It's best to do one or two at a time. With old vintage guitars, you can actually even cause damage. There's a lot of pounds of pressure that these strings pull as they're tightened up, and just loosening and taking them all off, slackening that pressure, can cause things in the wood to change. Most of the guitars that we buy these days have truss rod, at least one, that runs through the neck and can help stabilize it. But nonetheless, I usually only take all the strings off at once if there's some sort of repair that needs to happen that requires it. So we're going to do one at a time here with the Guild. Sometimes I'll do two, but I'll do one at a time so I can just show you how it works. So I personally sort of like to move on these steel strings, especially from the inside strings to the outside. So I start with the two inside strings. The top string, or the E string, is string number 1. The low 6th string, or the biggest string, the widest string, is string number 6, and everything just works numerically in between. So E is 1, B is 2, G is 3, D is 4, A is 5, and E is 6. It's important to know what those pitches are because we're going to be tuning up to those pitches. A couple things that I usually have around as I am doing this. One is a string winder. This is a D'Addario one. You can get these really inexpensive tools. This one has a wire cutter on it, which is kind of nice, and for the acoustic guitars you can pop out the pin. But I've got different brands. This is just the one I grabbed for today. I usually also have a clip-on tuner handy, or some sort of tuner, so that I can tune the guitar as I'm changing the strings. And then of course you need some new strings, and I usually have needle nose pliers handy as well. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is loosen the strings, slacken the string here, and I'm going to start with the 3rd string. So I'm just going to unwind it. I usually pluck that string and then start to let the pressure go. I usually keep my face away. Once in a while, slackening an old string will actually cause it to break. But I just go ahead and loosen it until I can unwind and pop it off. Some guitars will have a locking mechanism on the electric guitar where you actually need to loosen behind because it will have clamped in there on it. This guitar doesn't have that. Most guitars don't, but occasionally they do, and you can, I'm sure, look up videos on that. Now, the way the guitar, you want to pay attention to the way the string comes off. So I've taken it off the tuning key. As I come back towards the back, electric guitars kind of work in two ways. They either have a tail piece like this one does, that the end of the string was fed through, and sometimes that tail piece comes up over the end and you lock into it somehow. You just want to make sure how it comes out of that tail. And then the other place is sometimes guitar strings actually feed over the bridge and down through the middle of the guitar, and you would pull them out from behind. And so I've got a Carvin that does that. I've had Fenders that do that, and other guitars like it. So this one has the tail piece, so I'll be using the tail piece. So I pulled that third string off. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the new third string and put it right back through the way it came off. So I'm going to put that through this tail piece, the hole in the back of the tail piece, which is on this guitar. I'm going to feed it up and over the saddle. So there's a saddle there. Feed it up and over the saddle. And then I'm going to feed it back through the hole on the headstock. So the tuning key, the hole of the post there. It's really important that as I feed this through, that I'm coming through from the inside. So if I have these tuning keys, or these just like they are, where there's some split on one side and the other, I need that to go right through the middle of it. If they were on just one side, I need to make sure that, depending on the side they are, it's coming like down the center of the neck through. I don't want that string coming in from the outside and going around. That's going to be a problem. We need the string to wind around from the inside around the post, like so. So I put that string through that hole. I need to make sure that I leave excess, and then this is sort of a trick that I use to make sure that the guitar string doesn't slip, because these are really slippery steel wires. It can slip. So what I usually do is I wrap it around the post, coming from outside to inside. I go over the top, then I usually lift up the excess and come around and wrap it around again, this time going on what would be the underside of that excess, so it creates a nice tight squeeze on this wire. Then I pull back and stick it in the groove in the nut, and I use my hand, my finger, my thumb to sort of hold it in place, so that as I tighten the string, that it will tighten nice and evenly here, as it should, and just flow through that nut the way it should. The direction that I'm turning this particular one as the guitar is sitting is to the left. So it's not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's actually going, as I'm tightening here, to the left. But the important thing is the direction that it's wrapping around. It's wrapping around from the inside to the outside. As I get tighter, I can use my tuner here, and where I can start actually hearing a pitch. Oops. With these electric guitars, I wasn't paying attention as I was talking, but it needs to sit in the groove of the saddle. This one has individual saddles for each of these strings, so I need to make sure that it sits in that groove. And then once I can start hearing the pitch, I can tune it by ear, which is usually what I do. But I'm going to tune that pitch right up, tune that string right up to pitch. So I've gone a little bit past, and I do that. And sometimes then, once I've done that, I will pull on the string just a little bit and tune it again and put it pretty close. It's a little bit sharp, but it's going to stretch out. So, okay, once I've done that string, I'm going to go ahead and do the fourth string next. So I'm going to come around on the other side and loosen it. This one comes off quick off these electric guitars. There's not near as much excess. So I've got that string undone. I pull it through at the end, and I pull the new D string out I feed it back through, in this case from the tailpiece, but in some cases from the back side of the guitar through the body of the guitar. I'm going to run it, sit it in its groove, and make sure it's sitting right there in its own saddle. Some guitars, the acoustics, they don't have their own saddles usually, but a lot of the times on these electrics they do. Sometimes they share one with another string. So I have fed this string through from the inside through the hole, so it's poking on the outside, and I'm going to again wrap around the post. So I'm going to come off the top as I pull back. Come off the top as it pulls back. It's going to have wrapped around that way. I went over the string. Now I'm going under the string, and I'm pulling my excess there. That creates a nice tight squeeze on the excess, and then I go ahead and tighten the strings. Tighten the string up. As I do, I fit it into the groove in the nut. Tighten it to where I can start to hear the pitch. In this case, it also came out of the saddle as I was getting going there, pulling it, and that can happen. So you just got to watch for that. Tighten it up until I get it up to a D, which is what I need. And we are a little bit past, which will be okay. Let it stretch out a little bit. Electric strings stretch out really fast. Okay, so then I'm just going to move on to the B string. Once I get it loose enough, I can pull it off there. Pull it through the back end, and I get the new replacement out. Feed it from the tailpiece through. I'm going to set it in the saddle, but I need to watch because it'll probably come out inside to outside. Once I've fed it through, I'm going to wrap it around so it comes from the outside to the inside over the top. Then the outside to the inside over the bottom of that excess. It can get a little squirrely, these slippery steel wires. Once I've got that done in place, I feed it back through the nut, hold it kind of tight. As I tighten it up, I'm again moving counterclockwise or to the left at the moment. Let it get kind of tight, and on this guitar, come back and fix it right here in the saddle. Make sure it'll stay nice and tight, and then I bring it up to pitch. I've gone a little bit far. Let it stretch out a little bit. And let it sit. While I'm right here, I go ahead and do this E string. Got it loose. Pull it off the top. Feed it back through the tailpiece. New string. Feed it from the tailpiece. Or if your guitar has it from the back, feed it from the inside to the outside. On the top strings, I usually leave a little more excess to wrap around because they can slip. I'm going to wrap the wire from the outside to the inside, above the excess, and then below the excess. And then I'm going to hold it in the nut, hold it tight with my hand as I tighten the string. Electric guitars are the easiest guitars to change the strings on. They just wrap up pretty quick, and the strings stretch out really quick because they're pretty small. Now as I'm doing this, I've kind of got a little bit caught back here, and I just have to sort of watch for that as I'm getting the string tight, that it's lining up in the groove in the nut and the groove on the saddle, whatever type you have. As I get going, Get it in tune there. Now I'm a little bit far. That's okay, I'll stretch it out a little bit. Tens don't take a whole lot of time to stretch out. Go a little bit from this other angle. I'm going to move now to the A string or the 5th string. On this side, I am loosening it as I move clockwise. Let out of the top, back by the tailpiece. Probably getting the hang of it by now. New string goes in the hole on the tailpiece. Feeds through, same old game. Through the hole. Now, with the excess, you have the idea down. I'm going to wrap from the outside of the post around to the inside, over the excess, and then I come up and do it underneath the excess, and then I feed it back through the nut, tighten it up. From this side, I'm again moving counterclockwise, and I left a little more excess than I needed to. As it gets tight though, I need to watch that I'm fitting into that groove, and then I can go ahead and tune it up. We're there. Stretch it out a little bit and tighten it up again. Okay, then we only have one string left, the 6th string. Pull it back. And through. This is a vintage guitar, so it's a little bit touchier than some of the newer ones are back here. I have to leave enough, so I'm wrapping. I fed it from the inside to the outside again, and now I'm wrapping the wire around, or the string around, from the outside to the inside, once over top and then once on the underside. I didn't leave quite enough to actually be able to wrap around on the underside, so I'm just going to tighten, and as it tightens it'll stay on that underside, and then I'll come and align it and tighten it up. Once I've gotten all the strings in tune, or once I've got all the strings in place, then I need to go back and retune. This one had gotten a little high. These lighter strings, they change really fast. And as you're tightening it up, actually, you want to be careful not to go too far. And so it can help to have a chromatic tuner. Helps you keep track as it goes up the chromatic scale on how you're reaching that pitch. The first time I tried changing strings on an electric guitar was in junior high. I had the whole band watching and I broke the top string, the E string. That once in a while that'll happen anyway, but I don't know for sure. Being a youngster that I was, I might have over tightened it, or it just might have been a defective string. But however it was really great timing to do that in front of the whole class. Of course, somebody would have reported to the band director that I broke the string. So as I get it tuned, these ones stay in tune pretty well, but I'll usually play it and then retune, play it and retune. I'm going to point out one other element with electric guitars that's really nice, especially if you have like these tune-o-matic bridges where each one of the strings has its own saddle. So if you're going to intonate the guitar, and that's an important thing to do, then what needs to happen is when you play a string and it's in tune, like this low E string that I'm plucking, it's a little bit high. When I play it at the 12th fret, it needs to also be in tune. This one is. If it wasn't, if it was ringing through sharp or flat at that point, then what I need to do is I need to adjust what's happening back here, and you can take a screwdriver. If it's ringing through it sharp, and let me back up just a second. What happens here is with these different saddles, they can each be adjusted, and the adjustment will move them a little bit forward this way or a little bit backwards that way. This is the contact point in addition to the nut. These are the only two contact points, and the string rings in between those two contact points, and it vibrates and we get the sound of a pitch. So if it's ringing sharp, the distance between here and the nut, the saddle and the nut, is too short. We need it to ring a little bit. We need to adjust it by lengthening the string so it doesn't ring sharp. It's like making it more flat in essence. And so I would adjust, and most of these will have a little, like this one takes a little flathead screwdriver. I could move it back that way. And it's just going to be slight adjustments until when I play it open, it plays in tune as well as when I'm playing at the 12th fret. And that needs to happen for each one of these so that when we're playing along the neck, we'll be in tune, because the strings can read in tune open, meaning without any fingers on them. But as soon as we start playing different places along the neck, if it's not in tune at the 12th fret, it's not going to be exactly in tune when we're playing other pitches along the fret. So it won't sound right when we play various chords. So you can intonate electric guitars really easy, and that I usually check every time I change the strings to make sure that it's in tune. I'm going to show you just a teeny bit here on what I mean on intonating. So I was just explaining it. I've tweaked the E string just a little bit. So when I play it open, it needs to be playing in tune. It's just a little bit flat at the moment. Basically in tune though. And then when I play it at the 12th fret, it needs to ring in tune as well, but it's ringing a little bit sharp. So back here, it's sitting on its own saddle. With electric guitars, you can sometimes lift it off. If it's ringing sharp, it means that the distance between where it's sitting on the saddle and the nut is a little bit too short. So it's ringing high, because what happens is when we cut the pitch in half, which is or the string in half and the pitch in half, at the 12th fret, it rings at the octave. So that's the halfway point. So this is a great place to intonate. And it means that if the distance now between the 12th fret and this nut is a little bit short because it's ringing sharp when it's ringing just fine open, then I need that saddle to sit back just a little bit. So I would just go ahead and tighten it. This one uses a flathead screwdriver. Some of them use other types like a Phillips or something, but I'm just going to go ahead and tighten it a little bit, and that will move the saddle back further. If it was flat, I would have to loosen it and let it out, but by tightening this screw, it's moving this saddle back further towards my hand or the tailpiece, and I just have to do it a little bit, and then I can recheck. So it's in tune now. And when I ring it at the 12th fret, it's just a little bit flat. So I went a teeny bit too far, so I've got to loosen it and send it back just a little bit. And that's sort of how it goes. You might just over adjust it a little bit. Or you might not go far enough, and you just play with it until you can get it in tune. So there, I've got it in tune. So we're good to go. And that will make it so that it's in tune throughout the other frets. Alright, so besides intonating the guitar, I got to get rid of these wires. I don't know how often you see these wires just floating around like it's something cool at the end of the headstock. Once I've played it and the guitar is staying in tune, I can see that the strings are stretched out and that no slipping's happening. Then I go ahead and cut off the excess wires. And this particular string winder has a little wire cutter. And so I just come in and I come pretty close as I can get. You go ahead and you just snip them off. So I'll do that here with this one. Whoop, that one really flew. Once I have cut them off, what I'll usually do is, if I have a set of needle nose pliers like I have right here, then I want to go and personally, I like to bend them down, bend them off. So I have on this outside wire, it's sticking out, I just turned it over and bent it down. Sometimes I'll just sort of squeeze it in, because it's not fun to get poked. It's not fun to get, it's worse than a paper cut to get poked by these wires. So I just bend it down, sometimes squeeze it in to make sure that when I come across, I'm not gonna accidentally get poked every time I get near that headstock, or that it doesn't catch on any of my clothing and tear my clothing or anything like that. So I just go and bend them down, sort of squeeze them in on each of those spots, and that has saved me many a times from poking my fingers. All right, one other thing that I often do every time I change the strings is I polish the guitar up. Depending on the finish on your guitar, you can get different types of cleaners and polishes, and I usually just clean it up and polish it up and keep it nice, keep those oils off. Actually wipe the guitar down every time I play for the most part. So it's a good thing to do. You can check out my simple maintenance tips on taking good care of your guitars. All right, I hope that helps. I hope you're having fun playing the guitar and doing what you're doing with music. Take care. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For more in-depth lessons and to progress through a free guitar course, check out my Guitar 101 series on YouTube and my guitar method books, which all come with access to hours of in-depth video lessons. You can find more information about me and my products at KristenBromley.com. Take care.